relationship, a reciprocated relationship that's symbiotic between the state of consciousness that we are in, the state that we're in, and the world around us. And depending on the state of consciousness that we're operating in, the level of our being and our mindset, the way we are internally, that's the way the world is perceived. So we're seeing the outside from the perception of what's going on the inside, but even deeper, that the world not only appears to us to be this way, but it actually reflects to us the level of our consciousness in return. So what I mean is as follows. In general, there's this concept that there are 4 basic grades of reality. This is something that's written already in the early sources from the Rishonim, that there is the inanimate, the daimim. A more correct translation is not inanimate, but the silent one. There's daimim, silent. There's soimech, which is a higher form of life, a more complex form of life, a more evolved form of life, which is the world of vegetation. There's chai, which is the world of the animal kingdom. And then there's the medaber, which is the world of human consciousness. When man becomes when God blows into his nostrils a breath of life, so it means that man becomes a medaber, a creature of speech. So these are the 4 grades of reality. This is perceived as something that exists on the outside world, but also 4 levels of reality that exist on our physical level. There's a part of us that's inanimate. There's a part of our physical body that's animated. There's a part that's vegetative, which is simply the idea of the body grows. Is a part of the animal, part of the body that has also the idea of the animal kingdom within it, which is the human instincts of survival and perpetuation of the species. And then there's a higher level of consciousness, which is the creature of speech. So that exists within our physical bodies as well, these 4 levels. But they also correspond to 4 levels of consciousness. 4 levels the way we relate to the world. And not only are they ways the way we relate to the world, but then the world, not only is it from the internal to the external, from the object to from the subject to the object, from inside to outside, but then the outside world as well responds in kind according to our perception of reality. And we're supposed to evolve into higher stages. Let me explain what that means in very simple language. There's one way to see the world, which is that, again, this is a level of consciousness. When we live in a state of consciousness of daimim is silent or dead. This is one of the images in Tanakh and also in the Talmud, that doim, the idea of silence, is connected to death, the silence. So when we are when we're living in a state of inanimation or deadness, where we feel closed, shut down, we feel stagnant, then this is when a person feels this way, sort of like they're mechanically going through life and responding to life. There's a certain level of deadness, of the lack of aliveness that is going on. We're just going through our routine and we're just moving through life. It's just functionality, just functioning through this world. Immediately, not only is that a state of our consciousness that we feel within ourselves, but we also start seeing the world in that same way. The world around us, our perception of the world around us, also starts to appear to us as if it's functioning from a place of happenstance, that it's unintentional, that it's blind, that it's mechanical, that it's meaningless. In other words, when we live this way internally, when we're living with a state of consciousness, in a very, very low state of consciousness of this, like a mechanical being, just robotic living. We eat, we sleep, we work, even we learn, we daven, whatever we're doing in this world, but it's very mechanical. It's just, we're doing it because this is what's being done. Then the world also seems to us in a very mechanical, mindless, unintentional way. This is sort of a sliding scale. What the Rambam, Maimonides, talks about, the idea that there is Hashgacha Klalis, which is the general divine providence of the evolving of the entire world to a state of perfection. And then there's Hashgacha Pratis, which is particular divine providence, where there's intentionality in every single specific thing in life. And the way the Rambam describes it is that it depends on the person. When a person is on a very low state spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, etc., when a person is in a very low state of being, then there's only Hashgacha Klalis, there's only a general, like from the rest of the planet. And when a person functions from a high state, a person's a chacham, a person's wise and dedicated, a person's evolved, then there's Hashgacha Pratis, is more divine providence. So it's a sliding scale. Now, of course, we know that one of the great revelations of the unfolding of the revealing of divine presence within this world is the teachings of the Baal Shem, the teaching of Chassidus, the Chassidic teachers, which is that everything in this world has a Hashgacha Pratis. Everything has divine providence, and not only the Chacham, not only the wise person, but all humanity. And not only all humanity, but every single aspect of creation has divine providence. So translating the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, of divine providence in the particular, within the context of the Rambam, it would mean that in our perception of reality, it would appear as if we're not living with intentionality, which is Hashgacha, in our own personal life, we're living very mechanically and very robotically and very mindlessly, almost, and very dead in a way, and our life is not alive. And when we live this way, the world will appear to us, again, maybe not in actuality, but it would appear to us, and therefore what appears to us is most important. It would appear to us as the world is also unintentional, undirected, very mechanical. Things are just happening to you. Again, so it's not that it actually is true from a divine perspective, because everything has hashgacha, but the appearance would be in that scale, that sliding scale of divine providence, when a person lives with non-providence, non-intentionality, but lives mechanically, the world appears to be responding to them, and also appears to them from the outside in as very mechanical, very happenstance. So again, if you're living in the level of consciousness of unintentionality, you're living your life unintentional, the world will appear to you also to be unintentional. If you live your life non-purposeful, and not mindful, and not alive, then the world will also appear to you to be non-purposeful and dead. That's the response. So that's the level of daimon, that's the level of the inanimate. So our perception not only overlays reality, but the reality appears to us in this particular way as well. A higher level of consciousness would be a tzemech, which is a little bit more vitality, a little bit more growth, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more potential, a little bit more mindful, but just a little bit more. A little bit higher evolved level would be the level of chaya, level of life, which is the animal kingdom, which is that you're living with a lot of chayas, with a lot of energy, a lot of vitality, a lot of passion. Unlike the first stage, which is the inanimate stage, which you're a very monotone, a very dead form of life. You're just going through, you're doing what you have to do, and it's just mechanical. You're basically living in a robotic consciousness. In the level of chaya, and the level of life, there's a lot of life. You feel a lot of passion and a lot of desire, but you're living in a state of a lot of aliveness, but in a state of no mindfulness, and therefore there's a lot of panic. You're living in a state which is called, in an animal kingdom is fight or flight, which is that every single situation in life that appears to you, there's two options, and there has to be immediate response, and you have to frantically respond immediately to these two options, which is either you're going to fight the situation, or you're going to flight, or you're going to run away from the situation. There's a certain frantic way of living. There's a lot of life, there's a lot of vitality, you feel alive, but in a very frantic state. And it's sort of like you think that you're living with this certain sensation that you're waiting for the shoe to drop. Like your mindset in this world is that it's not settled, it's not presence, it's not slow evolvement, but things are happening very quickly, and even what you have, you're always worried that you're going to lose right away. God forbid it's your wealth, or God forbid something more deeper, more present, and more precious. That you're always afraid that I'm going to do this and this is what's going to happen. There's a certain sense of being frantic. A metaphor of this idea would be like the old game of the pinball machine. These arcade games, the pinball, which is like you're holding on to the two levers or the two buttons on both sides of the game, and the ball is dropping very quickly. And this would be life. This would be a metaphor of life. That life is approaching you, and you're encountering life in a very quick, sudden way, and the ball is falling, and you must do something immediately. And either you swipe to the right, you swipe with your right hand, or you swipe with the left hand. And you feel like if you don't swipe immediately, if there's not an immediate reaction when the ball is falling, then the ball's going to fall, and your whole life will just disintegrate into emptiness, into the abyss. So there's this certain sensation that you're playing this game of pinball, and you have to constantly swipe. And this swiping level of living, this level of constantly swiping, is that whatever arises, there has to be an immediate response, and the immediate response is I got to swipe in one direction or the other direction. The problem, of course, there's many problems, but one of the great issues with this way of living is that with every swipe that you do, there's a ripple effect. Let's use the metaphor of the pinball. Every time you swipe the ball upwards, so you feel like it's moving upwards and it gives you another breather, but remember that the ball, if you just swiped unintentionally, it's actually going to ripple and have an effect on something else. It's going to bounce to another thing, and it's come from a different direction. So, and then you're going to have to swipe even quicker. And it's just a level of living very reactively. The ball is falling, and you have to respond right away. And I'll give you a simple analogy of that. Let's say one day you're working for somebody, and the boss comes in, and I'm not saying this is justified, and the boss is a very not nice person, and he screams at you. And you say, you know what? That's it. I'm quitting. I'm quitting my job. And you storm out of the room. Now, that's a swipe. That's like life presented something to you, and you swiped. And then the next morning you wake up and you don't have a job. So there's going to be an effect of that. And you don't have a job, and therefore you don't have food. And therefore you don't have food, you're going to lose your whole... It could spiral out of control. And then every moment you're living, you're trying to swipe in a different direction. But you're not taking the long perspective. You're not saying, let me think about this, and let me respond proactively. You're living in a very reactive, immediate, responsive place. Life comes, you swipe. And the swipe also, you have to remember that there's always going to be an effect of that. So when a person lives this way on the level of chaya, on the level of an animal kingdom of life, there's a lot of life, there's a lot of thing, but it's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of panic. You're living from your life is being lived from one crisis to the next. Again, it's important to understand this. It's not only that's the consciousness that you live in internally, but what you live internally, if you live with that same frantic level of consciousness in a state of chaya, the world will actually start to appear to you in the exact same way. Just like the world appears to the person that's dead and very mechanical and just going through the motions, doing what they should be doing, but without any passion, without any thought, just mechanically, habitually going through life and very happenstance and very mindlessly, the world appears to them to be very mindless and just happenstance. Things just happen. The same thing also when a person is living on the consciousness of just swiping, living in a pinball game, and the person's just swiping life in a very frantic state, the world will also appear to them, which means the hashgacha, the divine providence, will appear to them in a way as something that's very frantic and immediate and just responsive. I do this, and that's the effect. I do the other thing, and the other thing is the effect. And every single moment that I'm alive, I'm just constantly waiting for the next thing to happen, and I'm ready to pounce on that thing, whatever it happens, and to push it in different directions. Now that's a very low level of living, a lower level of living of consciousness. So there's the habitual completely inanimate. There's a little bit more animation, which is the idea of tzemech, which is vegetation, and then there's chai, which is living a life, but again, without any mindfulness and presence. And again, it's the way you live your life internally and the way the world appears to you from the external, and they're both correct. The highest way of living, and this is the elevation, this is the deeper level, the deeper understanding of also what the Ari speaks about, what the Rabbi Zikluri, the Holy Arizal, and what all Sifrei HaSod, all this, the deeper books, texts speak about this idea of reincarnation, as souls migrating and transmigrating from different levels of consciousness. This also exists within ourselves. That when a person eats something, for example, eats food, to take something from an inanimate life and makes a blessing over it, this is all elevating from the doimim, from the inanimate, to the level of consciousness of the medaber, which is, what is the medaber? What is the creature of speech, the man? Man is a person that has a soul. The soul, on the very simple level, the way we're understanding in this paradigm, is that the higher way of living is to live mindfully, to live from a place of das. Das is awareness, conscious awareness. Das, da, comes the opposite of das. If you flip the word, it's the idea of aid, witness. Da and aid, witness. The witnessing self, which is a type of way of living where you're always assessing. You're mindful. You're able to be objective. You're not living your life reactively, but proactively. Life shows up, and then you make a choice how you're going to respond to that. Sometimes you're going to respond with flight, sometimes with fight, and sometimes something else. But you're going to make a conscious choice of how you're going to respond, which means you're living very mindfully, very intentionally. Everything that shows up is digested, dissected, and then there's a positive response from that place. So there's a level of objectivity. You look at the situation, you'll say, okay, what just happened? And what should I do? What is the best response? Not when someone tells you something, you immediately pounce on them and respond back. Let's say someone insults you. In the level of chaya, in the level of the animal kingdom, in the level of the life, you just respond, you swipe. Someone tells you this, you tell them back. And to say something, he says something worse, you tell them even worse. And what actually that does, it spirals out of control, and then the next thing you lose a friend, if that person was a friend of yours, or other negative consequences, because you can't even understand necessarily what the consequences, because it's like the pinball. You throw the ball up and then you hit it, and it goes in many different directions, and then you're gonna have to live with a frantic response to the next effect of that ripple effect. But the way to live on a higher level, which is the idea of living mindfully with das, with awareness, is that you're living constantly with a sense of observation, witnessing, dissecting, observing this, and then choosing how you're going to respond to life. And the more you live this way internally, this is the fascinating sliding scale of hashgacha, of divine providence, in the awareness of divine providence, the way it's revealed divine providence, because divine providence really exists within everything, but how the world would appear to you, the more you live mindfully, intentionally, and with consciousness, and with subtlety, and the more you present yourself into this world this way, the more the world actually appears to you to be intentional and mindful. The truth is, again, it is always this way, but it would appear to you this way. When you live this way, when you choose to live on a higher level of being, to live as a human being with free choice, and you live continuously this way, then the world will also appear to you in a way that's very mindful and present and subtle. Have a wonderful day.